Barrett Sallee, welcome back to T-Town. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well, Ryan. How are you?
Oh, it's a big day in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, very happy Alabama fans. A lot different than last Monday.
Yeah, about the polar opposite, I would imagine.
Sure. Let me ask you, give me your gut reaction. We're asking a lot of people to sort of relive the selection and going through the top four. When you see Alabama pop up at that number 4 spot, what was your instant reaction? You can take us back there.
I was surprised for a couple reasons. My reaction personally was okay, and I'll tell you why in a second. Surprised professionally for one reason and one reason alone. Why does the college football playoff exist in reality? The crux of it was because of poor ratings between LSU and Alabama and regionalization. And by having Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, and Oklahoma, you have more or less a southeastern college football playoff, right? Like that's a very regionalized, group of teams, and you're talking about potentially an All-SEC championship or an Alabama-Clemson championship, which is, a Georgia-Clemson championship, which is quite literally a 2-hour drive from each other in Atlanta, of all places. So that was surprising to me. The fact that they put 2 teams from the SEC in was surprising to me. I didn't think they'd do that. And the reason my personal reaction was, quite frankly, just okay, was because, in my opinion, there's a big drop from number 3 to number 4, whoever you think number 4 is. Because from a resume perspective, okay, maybe Ohio State has better wins. It certainly has worse losses. From an eye test perspective, yeah, Alabama theoretically looks great, but we've talked about this. They haven't looked that great for this last month. And if you're talking about pure eye test, you're being intellectually dishonest if you're not saying that Alabama is worse than Auburn, because they are worse than Auburn. We saw that. We've seen that. Now, resume perspective, obviously Auburn can't be in, but to me that's why it's just really, really messy that you're talking about really flawed teams for the number 4 spot, and I think it's proof to me anyway that in this college football playoff you get what you ask for. You want 4 teams, you get it. And in this particular year, I don't think the 4th best team in the country, whether it's Ohio State, USC, Alabama, UCF, Auburn, I don't think any of those 4 teams are as worthy as the top 3 for a national championship.
Barrett, you don't really think Wisconsin's better than Alabama, do you?
Well, I think Wisconsin is, when I put that on Twitter on Saturday,
sure.
At the time they were undefeated, and certainly they were more worthy of being in the playoff. At the time, they were undefeated. Do I think that Wisconsin can compete with Alabama? Absolutely. Do I think Wisconsin can make games into their own style? Absolutely. Do I think Wisconsin's defense can give Alabama fits? Absolutely. Do I think they can beat Alabama? Yes. Consistently? No, probably not. They're still a good football team. So that wasn't really the point of that tweet. The point of that tweet was this: if we're talking about the best 4 teams in the country, I can name you 4 better teams than Alabama. At the time, Wisconsin would have fit all the parameters. Now, obviously not, because they lost the game. But I can still name you 4 better teams than Alabama right now: Georgia, Auburn, Oklahoma, and Clemson.
Okay. But in the other day, do you think the committee got it right?
Yeah. I mean, again, yeah, I think they did because, I would have picked Ohio State because I do think that Ohio State is, I would say, more deserving. But you're talking about a more deserving for the number 4 team is like, that's why it doesn't really matter to me. Like, because I don't necessarily think the 4th best team in the country is all that good this year. So, I would have picked Ohio State because I think that it does matter that they won a Big Ten title game over a really good team. Wisconsin you can say they're not great, Wisconsin, or they're but they're good. They're solid. They're really, really impressive. They've got more signature wins, Penn State being another one, a top-tier-ish team. Alabama doesn't have those. Now, I know that, but then, again, I understand the other side. 31-point loss at Iowa, not acceptable. Would that have happened if Alabama was playing? Probably not. But so that gets back to my original point. I don't think the fourth best team in the country is really championship worthy this year, no matter who it is.
So I guess Alabama doesn't have a chance against the Clemson Tigers?
Oh, they've got a chance. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes to that game, I mean, look, being championship worthy right now does not necessarily mean impossible to win a national title. It's the same thing Ohio State did 3 years ago, and they won it as the 4th seed. I don't think a lot of folks looked at that and said, oh, they may not be worthy, but they still can win. They're still talented. So certainly Alabama's got a chance against Clemson. That's a different discussion altogether. Now, personally, I think it comes down to two simple things with that matchup. Who wins the battle on each line of scrimmage when each other has the ball? Do I trust Alabama's offensive line to hold off Clemson's defensive front? Probably not. Do I trust Alabama's defensive line to get pressure and rattle Kelly Bryant? I think that's a little more likely. So if I had to pick it right now, I'd pick Clemson because I do think that Alabama's offensive line is a weak spot that has been weak all year long, and no one seems to ever want to talk about it. And that plays right into Clemson's strength, which is his defensive front. But Alabama not having a chance in the game, like picking the game and picking whether Alabama's got a chance is different than being worthy to be in the playoff, because the latter is in the past, the former's in the future.
Let me go back to Nick Saban here. What I think he pulled off, I thought last week, when you and I talked and when others talked, I thought he would go out. I thought he would get on a lot of different radios and he would campaign for his team. But looking back, maybe that would look like that he was desperate. I thought it was a pretty masterful plan, lining him up on ESPN College Game Day and then sort of getting the final word. Even though Ohio State and Wisconsin was on television, he sort of got the final say with SVP.
Well, yeah, I don't know how much that matters. It matters to you and I because we sat there and watched the Big Ten championship game and Joel Klatt and all of his basically dismissiveness of Alabama during that game, and then bam, Nick Saban pops on SVP and he talks. It matters to us because that's we pay attention to that, and it would have mattered in the era of the BCS, sure, because voting was a part of that. They're not watching that. They're not watching SVP in that meeting after that game. So in terms of politicking, I think it has zero impact on how the vote went. In terms of public perception and receptiveness to what happened on Selection Sunday, absolutely that helped. Without a doubt, Nick Saban doing that helped. But in terms of actually getting in, I think if his goal was to politic, if his goal was to try to sway votes of those voters, he should have been doing that all week last week because that would be when they were paying attention. They were way too busy on Saturday night and were certainly not watching SCP, even though I enjoyed the segment greatly and certainly enjoyed them later on playing that soundbite and basically Nick Saban sliding Ohio State's 30-point loss to Iowa to Urban Meyer.
And he couldn't say anything. What could he say? It was like, it was.
And that's the thing is honestly, like they're two. I think Urban Meyer approached it in a way that it was a little different because, from a public perspective, I think now people are like, yeah, Urban knew it. And of course he did. But I think also Urban understood that what he said wasn't going to matter because those guys were too busy anyway. But no, he can't say anything. And really Jim Delaney did the same thing yesterday when he was asked on the 9 hours of coverage they had, what do you think? And Jim Delaney was like, I get it. Like, look, it is what it is. Like 31-point loss to Iowa as your second loss it makes an impact. And so, hiding from that, I think would have looked far worse for both parties.
Barrett, do you think this will move the conversation past four teams? Do you think, and I'm not talking about now leading up to the game, but when we begin to ADs and commissioners will get together and talk college football playoffs, do you think we'll readjust the criteria, or do you think we'll move beyond the 4 teams?
No, I think I don't think it does anything to it, and it really shouldn't. To be honest with you, I'm actually writing this for tomorrow. This is what you ask for. You ask for sloppiness. I mean, let's be real, and Alabama fans may not want to hear this, but let's be honest about what this debate is. We're debating very flawed resumes. Like, we're debating flawed resumes for the 4th spot. If you expand the playoff, you're just inviting more flawed resumes to the table. Is that what we want? Because I don't want access. I'm fine with 4. I preferred the BCS at 2. And I've always said I'd much rather have a team that's worthy be left out than every once in a while than ever allow one that is not worthy to get in. And we're borderline there now this particular year, because we had a debate whether a team that got blown out by 31 points should be getting in. You expand it, you're just going to ask for more of that. So I don't think it changes. I just think that you just have to define the landscape of what an excellent team is every year differently, which is great for college football. You have to do that. And in this particular year, I just think that there was a pretty big gap back down to number 4, and that's not to say Alabama can't win at all. But let's be honest. Let's not sugarcoat it, Ryan. Getting blown out, or getting dominated by 2 touchdowns by your arch rival in the final weekend of the year, that should matter in terms of being championship worthy. And if we're talking about protecting the regular season, we just saw the Iron Bowl not matter. Why should we take more away from the regular season by adding more playoff games? I don't get it.
Let's go back here for Kirby Hoke. Last Tuesday, when you and I were on that teleconference following the ESPN announcement, then we all joined together. We listened to Kirby Hoke. Does his comments mean something different after listening to him yesterday, talking about the little separation? Because it didn't sound like there was little separation. It would sound like he was either misleading or lied to us.
Misleading. I wouldn't say. I don't even know if he's misleading or lying. He's just spinning. Like that's his job. His job is to get there and spin. And yeah, my colleague Tom Pernelli wrote about this and how a week ago he said that there was close separation, and then yesterday said basically that Alabama was far and away better. Well, Alabama didn't play, and Ohio State won a conference championship game. How does that happen? All it tells me is that Kirby Hoke got spinning, and that's his job. I don't know what else he can do because he's the committee chairman. He's charged with this. This is all part of programming in terms of television ratings, and he's got to try to explain some things that are quite honestly inexplicable, because if he goes out there and says, oh yeah, Ohio State and Alabama are really close, after the end of the regular season, Alabama doesn't play. Ohio State wins a conference championship game with a quarterback who had surgery 6 days before the game, and then suddenly Alabama is far and away better than Ohio State. There is no explaining that. Like, there isn't. I'm sorry.
But at the end of the day, I mean, obviously they said the best 4 teams, and Alabama, in their opinion, was one of the best 4 teams. Whether, regardless of, I mean, either we trust the committee or we don't. I mean, I had a lot of suspicion going in that they wouldn't get it right, but obviously they had to go in that room and they had to answer the question: who are the best 4 teams? And at the end of the day, they thought Alabama was one of those.
They have to figure out what that definition is every year, and that I think is what we all try to talk about a lot of times is like pushing it back to years past. Now we've had 4 years of this, right? But what I think sometimes fail to realize is that determining what the 4 best teams are, it doesn't just change year to year. It changes week to week and hour to hour when we get down to crunch time. Like you can define it one way and then have to completely change the definition 3 hours later based on the result of a game, because of the way the landscape has shifted. And on Saturday, the landscape shifted from, okay, we've got an undefeated Big Ten champion that if they win that game, they're going to be in, to, oh, God, we've got a 2-loss Big Ten champion that lost by 31 points to a team that was unranked. Well, we've got to shift the meaning now. And instead of trying to say, okay, well, X, Y, and Z happened in previous seasons, this is how it should go down this year, I think we all need to be along for the ride. Because if you're just along for the ride, then you can properly analyze the college football playoff, because that's the only way to do it. There is no continuity, and that's kind of a good thing.
Barrett, final question. I was looking at your picks, and I know you've already said the Clemson's your pick right now, and I know we're 30 days out. You like them to win the Sugar Bowl. You like Georgia to beat Oklahoma. Let me focus right here on Baker Mayfield just for a minute. I know he's done all that. Certainly the Heisman Trophy. I know you're a voter. I'm a voter. We're not allowed to release our votes, but Baker Mayfield is obviously should win this thing going away. But is there part of you that would like to see him? I mean, I want to watch him go up against this Georgia defense. Like,
oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, man, that's what I mean. I'm looking forward to Alabama and Clemson, but I want to see Baker Mayfield go up against a real defense.
Oh man, like what that Georgia defense? People like I think Georgia's defense got undersold all year long. Man, they are so fast. They are the fastest defense in the SEC. They're the most physical defense in the SEC. They're the most disciplined defense in the SEC. I cannot wait to watch Roquan Smith and Lorenzo Carter and Davin Bellamy and that crew deal with this offense and Baker Mayfield, because there are going to be times in that game where Baker Mayfield just has a couple of don't want none slides. Like, he's a competitor and he's fiery, but when he gets hit by Roquan Smith a few times, I don't know how he's going to react, because he's not used to that.
No, I'm anticipating that matchup. I think they play in a pillow fight. I don't think his stats would be anywhere near when we talk about in the SEC. And like I said, I believe in Baker Mayfield, but I don't think he'd put up the numbers in this league. I just don't.
No, not if he's got to deal with defenses like that. I mean, that is, and that's why I picked Georgia to make the national championship game preseason. But I mean, that defense for Georgia going up against Baker, we've seen Baker get rattled, and we've seen emotions take over his game on several occasions. That he's going to be amped up for that game just because of what it is, but he's also, I think, going to be very volatile in that game because of what Georgia's defense is.